Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So today we're going over this week's new card, White Widow. White Widow is a 2-cost, 2-power card that reads, on reveal, add a Widow's Kiss to your opponent's side of this location. And the Widow's Kiss is a 0-cost, 0-power card that reads, ongoing. This has -4 power. Disable this ability if your side of the location is full. So very much looks like a powerful addition to junk-based strategies, which are already doing pretty well, so I expect this card to see quite a bit of play. Joining her this week in the Spotlight caches, we have Snowguard and Nico, both pretty high quality cards. Snowguard, mainly a Loki card at this point, but a pretty valuable one in that. And then Nico, very flexible card, saw a ton of play in different bounce decks, has been a mainstay in Destroy. Really just a good flexible 1-drop that can find its way in more decks than I think most. So yeah, overall seems like a pretty good week to me. I'm going to be picking this one up. I'm going to be going with caches because I don't really mind getting a chance at one of the variants, but really just going for White Widow. But I think if you are missing at least 2 out of 3 of these cards, it's probably a pretty decent week overall. And White Widow just seems like a very strong card, essentially a 2/6, that if it's not a 2/6 and it is a 2/2, it means your opponent's side of the location is full. Junk doesn't really have a way to fill up the opponent's board for 2 costs, so it seems like a very powerful addition to the archetype, especially so when we remember the silly things that Black Widow did in combination with something like Beast, giving your opponent multiple of the Widow's bites, and I think we're going to see some similarities there with White Widow as well. But yeah, that's the card. Let's take a look at our day 1 decks. All right, so starting off, we have a Annihilus junk deck. This deck was the first one that really made me start enjoying Cannonball, and I think White Widow is a perfect addition to it. Just another way for you to clog up your opponent's side of the board. Main game plan with this deck is you're trying to clog up one lane and then use Cannonball to win another. We do have enough generally powerful cards to where we can win without Cannonball. We have some stat sticks like Mockingbird. We have Sentry Annihilus Hood, which is one of the better packages in the game. We have Titania to go along with Goblin and Debris, Polaris for some more clog stuff. And we're running Carnage here just as a way to deal with some of the negative statted stuff if we don't get our Annihilus. Or maybe during White Widow week, the fact that a lot of people are probably going to be playing lists like this, Carnage definitely gets some excess value in countering opposing junk strategies, which is probably going to be pretty good this week. Yeah, I really liked this deck when it first came out. I was running Squirrel Girl to help with getting Mockingbird down for cheaper initially, but that felt like a pretty good spot to put the White Widow in, especially because if other people are going to be playing White Widow decks, probably don't want to be overfilling all your sides of the location with the squirrels because they're just going to clog you up easy. But yeah, I really like this deck quite a lot, and I think White Widow is going to be a fantastic addition to it. Then we have a slight variation on a deck I was playing on stream last week that I really like from Safety Blade. This is more of a lockdown style deck, so we're trying to close down a lane early with Professor X on turn 4, turn 5, and then solo the final turn with Cannonball. Nice thing about this deck is we actually have enough power output to where you can still reasonably get there if you don't get your Professor X shenanigans. Angela Kitty Hope is a hell of a package here. We have cards that are good with Professor X like Nebula and Jeff. We have a lot of cards that are really good with Ravonna here, reducing the cost of our Angela, our Wolfsbane, Goblin, Havoc. Ravonna is just an absolute MVP in this list, given all the stuff she reduced the mana cost for. And Havoc finally finds a home here. Really good with Professor X. If you have Ravonna, you can X and Havoc the same lane on turn 5, which is really, really strong. And the extra energy output from Hope Summers also helps enable us play an early Havoc, which can snowball out of control while mitigating its downside. I think White Widow's a solid addition to this deck because you can give them that -4 power and then put that in the X lane, or you could use it towards the end of the game to have a large statted body if you're not expecting your opponent to fill up that lane. Then we have a Darkhawk tempo list. So I've been seeing some people have success with this, and it seemed like a decent place to find a home for White Widow. Pretty standard Darkhawk Annihilus kind of list. You have all the rocks, you have the Kitty, Angela, Hope mid-range package, You have Darkhawk and Sentry for your big things, Annihilus to send the junk over, Red Hulk for just another big stat stick, and Beast for rebuying those powerful effects like the Hood, your rocks, your White Widow. Just in general seems like a pretty good thing to have. You can also use it to pick up the Void from Sentry if you aren't going to be playing Annihilus, or if you're worried about your opponent sending you a Void, which can be nice. But yeah, if you like the Darkhawk disruption style stuff, I think White Widow will find a decent home here as well. She also seems decent in the Zemo Mill style of decks. So this is a pretty standard one. Some run Professor X, some don't. I do think with popularity of Cannonball, X has been getting a bit better, and I think White Widow might make it even better. So definitely seems like a solid inclusion here. We kind of have the space in a deck like this where you don't have to run every single mill card possible. You'll notice we're not running Yondu here, and I don't think we'll really miss it. But we do have quite a few ways to mill the opponent's deck a bit with Cable, Gladiator, stealing a card with Zemo, ripping stuff from their hand with Dr. Octopus, and then closing out the game with one of our threats like Cannonball, Red Hulk, or Shang-Chi. Magic is definitely an MVP in this deck. I find with Dr. Octopus and Red Hulk, you really do want 7 turns. Just makes using those cards to their maximum effectiveness much easier. Plus, we get to mitigate the downside of your opponent kind of drawing an extra card because we will be milling their deck and ripping their hand, so it makes it kind of harder for them to play out their strategy as they normally would. If you like Zemo but want to go a little bit of a different direction, this is another update on my Black Bolt stature deck. A lot of people have enjoyed this one, including myself, but really just a solid mid-range deck. It does have a light Zemo package here, like the other deck, where we have Cable for stealing, we have Gladiator for milling, and we have Baron Zemo for nabbing a thing from them. But it's not solely designed around Zemo. We're also ripping stuff from the hand with Black Bolt and Silver Samurai. We can destroy stuff on board with Lady Deathstrike, Shang-Chi for big threats, Iceman and Ham for a little bit more disruption, and White Widow just because she seems like a decent stat stick in this kind of deck. Something else interesting with White Widow is you could kind of bait the opponent to fill up a lane with smaller powered stuff, because that usually costs less to get rid of the Widow's Bite downside, and then you can just clean up that lane with Lady Deathstrike. And then last but not least, we have a variation of the Supergiant junk that's been going around. I believe Woody hit number 1 with this a few days ago. A slight modification here from the initial list, but the idea remains the same. Supergiant, if you're expecting a meta where a lot of people are going to be running Annihilus, which is probably what's going to happen this week, Supergiant's quite good because you can hide your Annihilus behind it. Now that we don't have really the fear of Alioth anymore, because it's not so common, this is a good way to win the junk mirror. We are running Daredevil here mainly because opponents can also hide their Annihilus, so we kind of need to gauge whether they're doing that or not, because if they do that and you have priority, well, the plan doesn't really work. We also have Ronin just as our big stat stick, kind of like Darkhawk in the other versions, just a big statted 5-drop that you can potentially hide behind the Supergiant. Supergiant also has some flexibility because if you're not going the Annihilus route, you could potentially hide a Sentry, then use your final turn to fill up the right lane so you get a 4/10 that can't be sniped and doesn't have the downside. We have Disruption with Iceman and Cosmo. Cosmo, I think, kind of underrated right now. Gladiator just as a stat stick. Same with Maximus. Maximus has a bit of upside because you can use it to pump the Ronin, or you could hide it behind the Cosmo if you don't want to give them cards. And yeah, White Widow just seems like a fairly solid addition to another one of these junk style decks. And yeah, that's going to wrap it up for our day 1 decks. As always, links will be in the description if you want to grab any of the decks to import into the game for yourself. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Are you picking this one up? Are you excited for it? Or are you kind of dreading everyone playing Annihilus decks for the next few days? We'll see what happens, but I'm looking forward to seeing how this one plays out. It's going to wrap it up for this one, though. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.